Today we're doing an oil change on a 2008 Acura TSX. To start, I have this 3/8 drive ratchet with a 17mm socket, or you could use a 17mm hand wrench. I have this strap style oil filter wrench, but I prefer this cap style, and I have a work light. Also, my oil 5W30 Mobil 1 Wix XP oil filter. Oil filter number is 57356. You can find it at any auto parts store and any brand, that number. And then oil drain plugs right here by Dorman, doesn't really matter who makes them, and a pair of gloves. Besides the tools, I would also recommend to have a good floor jack as well as jack stands to support the vehicle while you're working underneath it. I also recommend to have an oil catch pan. I recommend lifting up the vehicle at this front subframe. I usually try to put my jack right a little more to the right. That way I have more space on my left side where the oil drain plug is located at. Just lift up the car. Now that the vehicle is raised, I recommend you place one floor jack right here on the left side, on the passenger side, I should say, of the vehicle, on this pinch weld. And I recommend the same placement over here on the driver's side, the front left side. Once your car is in the air, I would position your oil drain pan directly where the oil is going to flow out of the vehicle once you crack the 17mm nut. I'm using my ratchet because that's what I prefer. You can use whatever tools you have accessible. I wasn't too bad to crack. You're not supposed to tighten these too much. So just open it up. At this point, it's loose enough. You can loosen up by hand. And I got an oil over my hand, but that's no problem. I'll just wash it off. This is why you should wear gloves. That's what I recommend, but I didn't do that. So let's move on to the next step. And now that your oil is draining out slowly, I would usually hit it with some brake cleaner. That way you can kind of wipe off anything gross underneath, especially any oil that remains here. After you start driving, you might think, oh, hey, there's a leak, but it's just usually residual oil. Now that the oil is finished draining out, I'll get a new crush washer, which I have right here in my hand. I know it's hard to see. I have the drain plug right here. Put it on there. Technical difficulties. And just begin to screw it in by hand. Now that you've drained out all of your oil, you can use your oil filter wrench to start removing your oil filter. Usually once you get these cracked, you can remove them by hand. Oil will start leaking out of here, so just be careful with that because it might be hot. And make sure your drain pan is still positioned well. Once you have your new oil filter prepped by putting some old or new oil on the gasket surface or on the edges of the oil filter, you can just go ahead and screw it on like that. You don't need to make these too tight, just hand tight, make it pretty snug. There we go, that's all she'll want to do by hand. Then usually I'll just wipe them off with the towel here. And then you can turn it some more. It's pretty hand tight. Then anywhere that there's oil spill, you can just wipe off a rag, a towel. Now that we're on the top side of the motor here, I get our funnel and start adding our oil. This car takes about 4.4 quarts, so you can just buy a 5-gallon jug, and whatever you don't use, you can keep extra. And remember to always check how much oil you've put in your car. Right here, you can see that it's at the prerequisite level indicated by that second hole. You could generally be around the middle and you'll be safe, but I like to get it to the top portion because this car sometimes burns oil. Now that you've refilled your car with oil, you can go ahead and turn the key to the ignition 2 position. We're going to reset the oil change light. Right there, I've already navigated to the screen, but if you're not on the screen, you can just hit the select reset button to get there. And then you hold this button down, the select reset, for 10 seconds. And then you just press the info button and then hit the select reset button to reset. Now that you've reset your oil light, you can go ahead and turn on your car fully. Make sure it fires up nicely. Usually I'll run my car for a minute or two and then recheck my oil to make sure it's at the correct level. But I will also look underneath it to check for any leaks. But that's how you do an oil change on a 2008 Acura TSX. It's very similar on the Honda Accord of that generation and many other Honda models from those years.